Well, we are now in Sandton City, Iman. In fact, we've just come into a restaurant called Tang. We have the officials at this point, as you can see, that's Labour Department. They've asked all the employees to report to this area. We understand that there's going to be just over 6 restaurants that are going to be inspected in the area. You've got immigration. Immigration is going to be looking at the paperwork and in terms of whether South Africans are employed or not. But I want to bring in now the Chief Inspector in Gauteng, and I want to ask you now, so we can see you already calling people in. Could you perhaps explain to us what is the process now?
Well, good. I'm not sure if it is still the morning. Good morning to everyone. The process is that when we arrive here, we need to then make sure that all laws are complied with, including immigration laws. That is why we call the employees, so that we can check their status in the Republic of South Africa, which will be done by our sister department officials, the Department of Home Affairs. And in our case, the Department of Employment and Labour will also interview them to check if they are earning the national minimum wage and if safety is observed here. But we'll also do a walk-through inspection for safety, and we'll check if they are also registered with unemployment insurance and the commission fund. So that will check using their identity documents.
Advocate, I know there's a lot that you are going to do today, but did you perhaps profile specific restaurants that you are going to?
Well, we checked restaurants in general. We did not profile the specific restaurant, and we said we were reacting to non-compliance in this particular industry, because we have a lot of complaints that came from this industry. So we thought that we should then do blitz inspections. So generally, we are doing blitz inspections in all the restaurants in the province, starting from yesterday. But today we are on a joint inspection with other sister departments, so that we strengthen the high-level, high-impact inspections that we are doing. So the buying council is also part of us today in the Department of Home Affairs.
You spoke about national minimum wage. Take us through what is the usual occurrence in the restaurant industry when it comes to these things, and what is it that you expect them to do correctly?
Well, we expect the current national minimum wage to be complied with, which is 28 Rand 76 cents in terms of the collective agreement of the bargaining council, and 27 Rand 58 cents in terms of the national minimum wage of the Department of Employment and Labour. But in this case, because here in Sandton, there's a collective agreement, the collective agreement rate, which is better, will be the applicable one for 28 Rand 76 cents.
Right. And whilst you look at that national minimum wage, there's also issues in terms of who employs who, and you were explaining this to us. What are restaurants, and who exactly is supposed to be employed in a restaurant, and how does that work?
Well, South Africans are supposed to be employed in a restaurant, and if you've got to employ a person from another country, then that person should be possessing a skill that we don't have in the country. So in the restaurant industry, usually I cannot think of anything that will make an employer to employ a foreign national, because otherwise what skill will we prove to say this specific skill we don't have in the country? But the employers are allowed to employ foreign nationals, rate, but they should also South Africans and prove that they do not have that skill, and apply for a work permit to the Department of Home Affairs, which will come through the Department of Employment and Labour, where we'll then inspect compliance with the employer and recommend to Home Affairs whether the employer deserves to be given a work permit or a corporate permit. But in the case of restaurants, well, they'll have to then justify why would you employ a foreign national.
And of course, you were talking about the fact that most restaurants are found to not really comply. Why is this?
They definitely don't comply, and we suspect that the employment of foreign nationals, based on the interventions that we made and what we established from the previous inspections, is that they underpay them, they do not comply with the national minimum wage, and that is why we say they do not employ foreign nationals because they love them, but because they are able to abuse them and knowing that they might not approach the Department of Employment and Labour. Whereas we say as the department that everyone is entitled to a national minimum wage, irrespective of his nationality, and that must be complied with. And in their case also, where we find them non-compliant, it's in terms of gas installations when we come to occupational health and safety. But then the hardest hit section is usually the waitresses and waiters, who are usually paid on commission and only on interest. So we say that it's not in terms of the law, they must be paid in terms of the national minimum wage or the wage of a collective agreement, because it's a better wage.
And of course, we want you to continue with your work. So I'm going to ask you the last question. Should you find that this restaurant and
Right, we've lost signal there with Nqobile Madlala, who's on the ground with a multidisciplinary team comprising of labor officials, home affairs, as well as police in their inspection in terms of enforcing aspects of the law as well there. And we'll check back with her later on as this operation develops.